Friends, my name is Abhay Kumar, and today I am going to talk with Praveen Thalapalli. He is doing his PhD at Center for Political Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. He is also associated with BAPSA, that is Ambedkarite Association, and he was also presidential candidate of JNUSU, Jawaharlal Nehru Students. Uh, 2 years back. So we are today going to discuss Manyavar Kashi Ram's book, The Chamcha East, an era of stooges. This book was dedicated to Jyotirao Phule, and it was published. It was released in 1982. That was the occasion of 34th anniversary of Pune Pact. Pune Pact is very, very important in Indian history. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, struggled to get a separate electorate from the Britishers, but Gandhi ji said that having separate electorates for Dalit will divide Hindu society, and then he had hunger strike, and then Ambedkar was pressurized to give up separate electorate, and then he was forced to accept joint electorate. That has really given a big blow to the questions of representations to Dalit. So we will be talking about these all issues with Praveen. Praveen is deeply interested in political theory, political history. He is a well-known intellectual in JNU. So Praveen, you have just told me a few minutes back that you have also read Chamcha Ace, and you also spoke about it yesterday when JNU BAPSA unit was celebrating 77 birth anniversary of Manyavar Kashi Ram. So what are the basic ideas of the book? Many people may not know it.
English or Hindi? English, no?
As you feel comfortable.
Okay.
No problem. Hindi boliye.
Okay. Thank you, Abhay. Firstly, this book was written, Chamcha's book was written by Manyavar Kashi Ram on the 50th year of separate electorates. That is Pune Pact. While he was writing this book is more or less like what happened with separate electorates. What has separate electorates done to Indian electoral democracy, or let's say the representative democracy in India? So he is analyzing like from 1952 elections to let's say the elections in 1980s. What has happened, let's say in Lok Sabha elections and also in the state assembly elections? What did it give to the democracy per se? And when he is talking about democracy, here he is also meaning that let us go by the title Chamcha Age. Now, who is this Chamcha and whom is he calling Chamcha? So, Chamcha is stooge in English, right? Yes. So, he is pointing out that there is a stooge in the electoral democracy who is trying to represent you, who is trying to represent, let's say, the scheduled caste according to constitution, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and OBCs according to constitution. But they are actually not representing to you. Why are they not representing you? They are not representing you because they are working for someone else. Who is this someone else? This someone else, let's say, can be Brahmanism. This someone else can be, let's say, the national parties of the 1980s. And this someone else can also be, let's say, in the book he is talked that there are various kinds of chamchas. So what are these various kinds of chamchas doing? And whom are they fooling? See, what is the chamcha is actually trying to block, the chamcha is actually trying to stop the success of, let's say, electoral democracy. Let's say he is trying to stop the success of representative democracy. In the sense, let's say if a person belonging to a scheduled caste community or let's say a scheduled tribe community is contesting from, let's say, the Congress, Indian National Congress. What is he doing to the constituency? Is he helping? let's say in the reserved constituency, is he trying to build, let's say, the roads, or let's say the schools, let's say the hospitals, or let's say education institutions, or let's say is he providing the basic facilities? So this is more or less we have to understand. Why is he not able to do so? He is not able to do so because he is under the pressure of someone sitting in the Congress who is sitting in, let's say, 10 Janpad, let's say, who is sitting sometime in the AICC headquarters, and this schedule
Ashok Karod also.
Ashok Karod, whatever. So this fellow who is trying to who gets elected in the name of scheduled caste, who is getting in the name of scheduled tribe, and also who is trying to say, I am the representative of the scheduled caste from this constituency, that is the reserved constituency. He is not doing work for you. So this he is pointing out.
Okay.
He is pointing out the failure of this because of this because of this joint electorate. Now the reserved seats are almost like joint electorates. In the sense there is no separate electorate. So you are contesting in which everybody has the right to vote in the general electorate, right? In the general electorate, even the upper caste and also the Kshatriyas and also the Banyas, everyone is voting. So whom are they selecting? Are they selecting a candidate who is actually trying to go with the values of the constitution? Are they trying to elect someone who is going in the principles laid down by Ambedkar, Phule, and or let's say the anti-caste movement? They are not. They are electing only somebody who is trying to listen, let's say to the 10 Janpad, or let's say to the BJP led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, LK Advani, or let's say by Amit Shah or Adani, these kind of characters. So if you are contesting from reserved constituency has a principle, right? Why is the constituency reserved? The constituency is reserved for the fact that, here the candidate who is getting elected will represent the interest of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. That is the point of the reserved constituency. So when they are not representing the interest of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, what do we call them? Why are they not representing? Isko samajhna, we have to understand this. So in understanding this, he has written this small monograph in which he is actually giving you a lot of details. What are these chamchas actually doing? Now these chamchas are actually trying to tell that, come what may, democracy will only be applicable for certain people. Now when we go and ask them, they will say, listen, you are the guys who voted for us. See, what can we do? Now, can we do anything? So therefore, he is trying to say what is happening in the reserved constituency.
Okay, so what I have understood from your argument is that you will find in parliament and in state assemblies that there are many leaders, members of that house coming from that, let's say, deprived communities, Dalits or Adivasi. But when it comes to protecting the interest of that community, they are not working for the community. They are under the pressure of the party and also so many other things. And interestingly, Manwarji is saying that look at joint electorate. The number of voters which come from scheduled caste is outnumbered by the number of the voters who are not scheduled caste and who are not Dalits. So the ratio would be around 1/5 or 1/4, or you say 1/3. So we are not going into that. But the point is that if I am a Dalit and if I am contesting elections, I am more compelled to appease those who do not belong to my community than living up to the expectations of the community. So basically the argument is that there has to be an autonomous Dalit movement. There has to be an autonomous Dalit Bahujan movement. That can only bring about some change. Am I right?
Yes. See, for example, let's say the Dalit Mahasabha of Andhra Pradesh was an autonomous Dalit movement. The Dalit Panthers of Maharashtra and also elsewhere, they are also an autonomous Dalit movement. the Dalit Sanghar Samiti of Maharashtra were also an autonomous Dalit movement, and also the Dalit Sena, let's say in Karnataka and also in the state of Bihar, it is also an autonomous Dalit movement. So these autonomous Dalit movements have never cowed down, they have never bogged down to the, let's say, any party. They have always questioned the Brahmanical hegemony, they have always questioned the caste hegemony, they have always questioned various kinds of injustices that are perpetrated, that are forcefully, enforcedly imposed on the Dalits. So this is the autonomous Dalit movement that has existed. And let's say the autonomous Dalit movement in this country, whether it happened in the times of Ambedkar, whether it happened in the times of Kanshiram, whether it happened with Panthers or DSS, Karnataka DSS, Dalit Sena of Karnataka, or let's say of Bihar, so they never stepped down. So Dalit movement has to be always autonomous. I will tell you one fact. The Andhra Pradesh Dalit Mahasabha, which is an autonomous Dalit movement, they ensure that the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocity Act is passed in the parliament. Why did they do so? In 1980s, in Guntur district, Karamchedu,
yes, continue.
so in the state of Andhra Pradesh, when the Kammas had killed Dalits in Karamchedu, so what happened? The Dalit Mahasabha actually did protest, let's say in Hyderabad, let's say in Guntur and the entire Telugu states. And they ensured that, it comes to Delhi. And when they actually came to Delhi, they did not give it up. They wanted the parliamentarians to speak on the rights of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Now, what are these rights? The Constitution of India, in the fundamental rights, say that Constitution, no citizen shall discriminate anyone. Now, killings are happening in the name of caste. Killings are happening in the name of in the name of protecting upper caste, and also some sects of Hinduism. So, therefore, the life of a Dalit, the life of an Adivasi, or let's say in the Constitution, the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes are important. So, the success of Andhra Pradesh Dalit Mahasabha is that, the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocity Act that is constituted in the parliament that is coming to us in the form of legislation. That is the success of an independent autonomous Dalit movement. So if Dalit movement has to be autonomous, it has to be autonomous like that.
Okay.
So that, it is at least able to give people, one, it is contributing to the Dalits and Adivasis, let's say, legally and also constitutionally. One is this. And second, it is also trying to tell all the other existing movements that, whatever you do, you cannot just end it on the streets. It has to reach the parliament also. It also has to have a legislation that will have some meaningful, that will have some meaning to the lives of the Dalits and Adivasis. So this is what the Andhra Pradesh Dalit Mahasabha Dalit movement was. So it has, independent autonomous Dalit movement has to be like this. And going by and if you go by Dalit Panthers are like, see, they created a Dalit consciousness. That is very important. See, after the Britishers left India and after the elections in India, more or less, no one was using the word Dalit. It was either Harijan was the term, scheduled caste was the term. So this was the terms. The manifesto of Dalit Panthers actually brought the word Dalit into the public consciousness. It brought a public domain. This word Dalit became a public domain. It became a political language. So the definition is like, everybody who is oppressed, suppressed, depressed and subjugated according to caste or any form of hierarchy, they are Dalits. This is Dalit Panthers. So they created a political language of what is a Dalit. So this is the greatest contribution of Dalit Panthers. One. Second, because of this consciousness, now in the state of Maharashtra and also a couple of other states, Dalits started realizing that, okay, so I'm oppressed and suppressed, depressed because of caste and caste hierarchy. So they are trying to now the Dalits are trying to educate themselves. See, in the 1970s and 1980s, in the state of Maharashtra and nearby areas, Dalit youth used to get dressed formally matlab they used to get wear formal dress, go to library, pick up a book, pick up a notebook, make some notes, study, and used to compete in the university exams and compete in the public service exam. And a good literate, a good kind of a literate educational or literary movement was going on. See, Dalit Panthers leaders were both. They were public leaders at the same time and also literary figures at the same time. So this is a good assertion of the Dalit Panthers. And Dalit Panthers, because of Dalit Panthers, what happened is that a great amount of Dalit literature came out. Let's say from the state of Maharashtra, Dasal was a great poet by himself. Raja Dale was a great poet, was a great writer and philosopher himself. And also J.V. Pawar is a good kind of orator and historian. So Dalit Panthers contribution is, how you have to write. Matlab, if you do not write, what is happening in the state? What will the state do to you? Writing as resistance is the greatest contribution of Dalit Panthers, and also from there Dalit literature emerged. So that also I consider as the independent autonomous Dalit movement. So we have to consider this.
Okay, so I am asking that Kanshi Ramji, and I thank you very much Praveen that you have corrected me. The book The Chamcha Age was written in 1982 and the Pune Pact was done in 1932. It means that the book was written after 50 years of the Pune Pact. Okay. So at that time when the Pune Pact was implemented, and then we have joint representations, and then Kashi Ramji is analyzing the situation for last 50 years, and he is saying that the representations from the Dalit community have been almost nominal. They are not the real representation, and they have mostly worked for, let's say, the interest of non-Dalits. So, but given the situation in 2021, when the book was written in 1982, I think almost 40 years have passed.
Yeah.
I think the Chamcha age has become much more relevant today.
Yes, it is true.
Yes, in two sense I am saying that the Dalit leadership in let's say in mainstream party, the so-called Brahminical parties, they are completely silent. If I go to a street and I ask who is the chairpersons of ST-SC commissions, not many people know it.
Yes.
The press is not writing about it, and we know that there is so much power given to SC-ST commission, but it is silent because they are picking up people from their own party and they are not much concerned about the human rights violations. So my point is that on the one hand we have people sitting in, working in, let's say, mainstream parties, they have little concern. We have also a established phenomena that Dalits will always be given seats from the reserve category. Nowhere it is written that Dalit cannot contest from the general election. This is another problem. The third problem is that is the internal critique, and I think you should take up this question. People are saying that, many people are saying that even the Dalit parties, they are not very vocal.
What is a Dalit party? Is there a Dalit party in India?
Okay. I stand corrected. Okay. Let's say the Bahujan party.
Okay.
The party which is based on the ideology of Ambedkar and and Bahujan ideology. Okay.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. I am also using the popular language. Sorry.
Okay.
So I am saying a party which is based on, let's say, let's say Ambedkar ideology or Dalit Bahujan ideology or Manavar Kashinam ideology. There is also a sense that it is also not waging a struggle in the street.
Okay.
So it is also not that vocal which the supporters would have liked.
Yes.
So now I find problems at three levels.
Yes.
One level, mainstream parties and their leaders coming from the deprived background, they are almost silent. Press is not talking about it. General seats are reserved for the Brahmins. And even the parties which are formed, which are established in the name of giving justice to, let's say, the most deprived people, they are also not vocal. Apparently speaking, what is the image? What is the perception, wider perception? Okay. If I am wrong, please.
Yes. See, there are a couple of things one must understand.
Yes.
One, in the times of Kanshiram, and in his active life, he absolutely ensured that a Dalit can win from general constituency. Let's say any SC, ST, OBC can win from general constituency. This he has proved it in the state of Uttar Pradesh and also in a couple of other states as well. So this is the greatest contribution of Kanshiram. Here what Kanshiram is trying to do is this. He is trying to tell that general constituency is open for everyone. It is not reserved for, let's say, the Brahmin, Baniya, Thakur, or let's say any
people,
it is not written for caste elites. General constituency is for everyone. Because in general, according to constitution, everybody is part of that. Everybody constitutes the general. So this is what Kanshiram is doing. And what the hegemonic parties in India have done is, whenever they have given assembly election tickets or let's say MP parliamentary tickets, election tickets to any SC candidate, do we know them? Can we know the political profile of them? Can we write something on them? What is their contribution to that constituency? What is their contribution to the Dalit community? Or what is their contribution to, let's say, the Dalit movement, or let's say the ideas of Ambedkar, or let's say the ideas of anti-caste movement? What is their contribution? If you largely take an interview, largely take a random survey, or let's say a proper survey in a university space, or let's say in a Dalit locality, or let's say in an Adivasi locality, or let's say in an OBC locality, can they identify the elected representatives of a reserved constituency? Can they identify? Can they explain the work of the lead of the representatives of the reserved constituency? Why are they not able to do so? There are so many reasons. They are not able to do so because, let's say, anybody who's contesting from BJP or let's say Indian National Congress, they are not working for scheduled caste or scheduled tribes. They are working for the interest of, let's say, 10 Janpath. They are working for the interest of, Atal Advani and Modi and Amit Shah. Okay. This is more or less what they are doing so. And they are also working in the interest of, protect the interest of the Congress and also the BJP. Protect the interest of the Congress and BJP is not the promise of Dalit politics. It is not the promise of reserved constituency. The reserved constituency promise is such that, you must ensure the rights of the scheduled caste. You must ensure the rights of the scheduled caste.
Are they protecting?
They are not doing so. They are not doing so. Therefore, parties like BSP, therefore parties that has come up in the name of Bahujan, therefore parties that have come up in the name of Ambedkar, therefore in the lines of Ambedkar, let's say in the lines of Phule, and let's say in the lines of anti-caste thought, they have ensured some, at least if you go to UP, let us study UP. Let us study UP. What was UP before the electoral intervention of BSP? It was largely Congress. No, let us speak logically. Okay. Before the intervention of BSP, did atrocities stop in Uttar Pradesh? Atrocities still continue. But in the let's take 2007 to 2012, this is a full-fledged government of BSP, 5 years. In the 5 years time period, what happened? Is there a major violence in the state of Uttar Pradesh? Let's say against the Dalits, let's say against the Muslims. Did it happen? To my knowledge, and in the police records and in the state records, it is not at all recorded that there is a major violence against the Dalits and Muslims in the state of Uttar Pradesh. Second, Ayodhya judgment came when Mayawati was the chief minister. Violence did not break in state of Uttar Pradesh. Why did it happen? Why we should not?
She has also the role as the opposition leader.
No. Yes, we will come to the opposition. Okay. Let us examine governance now. Okay. We are talking of the book Chamcha age. Okay. So, and Kanshiram is the founder of BSP. Okay. And when he is the founder of BSP, and when he is writing a book, and when he is making sure that BSP candidates contest election and they win election, they are trying to engage. They are participating in the state process, right? They are participating in the state, and in the state, of course, there is legislative, executive, judiciary. They are participating in the legislation, and they are also becoming part of executive. Okay, when they are becoming executive, there is a vision of state that they are projecting. What is their vision of state? Now, in the state of UP, you take a random survey. You openly ask people whose governance was best in the entire chief ministers. Matlab, from Govind Ballabh Pant to, let's say, Yogi Adityanath, the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh. Let's take chief minister and prominent politician. Whose governance was best? This is not my opinion. I have done field work in UP many times for my own research, and I can tell it very well that law and governance is very good and very well monitored by Mayawati when she was the chief minister. This is the generic understanding of people. Okay? This is one. And you must also understand that there are limitations to representative democracy also. What are the limitations? The limitations are such that when the public consciousness, when the general consciousness is not willing to overthrow caste, can an anti-caste party absolutely challenge the Brahmanical hegemony? This is the question before us. How can it do so? It can do so when there is social movement and when there is cultural movement. For a political party to challenge Brahmanical hegemony in the legislative or the executive, you need to have the social movement and the cultural movement against caste, against patriarchy, against capitalism on ground. If the social movement and the cultural movement is not happening, it is not a worthy thing to expect. It is. Of course, we should expect the parties working on anti-caste lines to challenge the Brahmanical hegemony in the parliament and also in the assemblies, which BSP has done a couple of times in the state of Uttar Pradesh. Let us take, when Mayawati was chief minister, what are her policies? What are her policies? What was the state of governance? What did she do? Is there a PhD written in JNU? Is there a PhD written in the entire world on her policies? Is there a good work by sociologists, social anthropologists, or let's say academicians? Did they do? Now, how do you study? Will you only study Congress? Will you only study BJP? No, this is the limits of academia, no? This is the limits of academia, no? See, you go by Lucknow. Before Mayawati, what was the state of Lucknow?
I am asking, Praveen, that the regime which is in power, we know it that it is not working for people, it is very oppressive, but that regime cannot be changed. You cannot wish that regime away, you have to struggle it in the street.
Yes.
So I am saying, when the Dalit ki beti, when the mother's daughter was being attacked and it was being assaulted, people believe that it could have been the big occasion for let's say the Bahujan party to come to the street.
Acha, listen. Hathras incident happened in UP.
Yes.
Okay.
But many people say, I am saying it's allegation. Many
Yes,
people say
now you listen.
that the opposition, the real opposition was people outside the party. Am I wrong?
You are not wrong. You are not absolutely wrong.
Yes.
You are not absolutely wrong.
Yes.
And you are not absolutely true also. Now I will clarify. I'll clarify. Bihar elections were supposed to happen.
Yes.
Okay. Azad Samaj Party, headed by Chandrasekhar Azad, Advocate Chandrasekhar Azad, they were supposed to contest elections. Advocate Chandrasekhar Azad comes from Bihar and he takes up this case